So one of the things that we've spent a lot of time on over the past 2.5, 3 years is really operationalizing our culture and creating an environment where we have organizational habits within the company that are behaviors and events and things that we do day in and day out, week in and week out, to create an environment of collaboration and engagement and empowerment for the team. And we have worked hard to create an environment of psychological safety.
Yeah, and psychological safety is something that is talked about a lot, not always favorably. Some people kind of shy away from the term or just don't really understand why that's so important. And what I've learned as a CEO, and I think we learned as an organization, is psychological safety isn't just important to the people that are talking about it and asking for it. It really, truly brings out the best in everyone. And I think the partnership with Fulcrum at the board level and at that partnership level, that they created that for us, right? When we were able to, on a weekly call with them or a board meeting or any interaction with them, if we were able to raise our hand and say, I don't know, the reply was, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together. They didn't answer the question for us. That's not their job, right? But they helped guide us to that. And what that created for me, from the board level down to the CEO, that allowed me to then, hopefully and potentially create that for Haley at the COO position, and then her 6 direct reports. And then that trickles down all the way down to all 91 employees. So you don't start psychological safety because someone asked for it, right? And it starts from the top. And that top, in this particular case, wasn't me as the CEO. It really started at the board and Fulcrum and our other investors providing that for me, which then allowed that to permeate through the organization. Well, from the beginning, when we were looking to raise funds and partner with a new financial provider in 2019, I had a set of rules, but the number one rule was looking at the bios of the partners to see if they had operating experience, and that was kind of a mandate that it wasn't just a fund of people who had been in funds their whole life. The operating experience was actually what we were most looking for. A lot of funds can write checks, or most funds can write checks. That's kind of why they're in business. But very few of them in the marketplace can provide that operating experience. And the 3 years that we were with Fulcrum definitely proved that as a very valuable trait.
I would say there was such a level of empathy that the Fulcrum team offered because they've been in our shoes before. And so when we brought problems to the table, they had either solved them or had been faced with similar problems. And so there was kind of a shared language already, and that operational experience is so important for that.
Yeah, the empathy was the key, I think. I think that's the perfect point, which is, it's always going to take longer. It's always going to cost more. Maybe not going to be as successful as you thought the initiative was going to be. And I don't think you're going to know that until you've operated a company, truly been in the seats. And that proved valuable throughout the whole time. The first time Fulcrum provided the example of psychological safety was actually during our process of trying to get them on as partners. During the process, we lost our number one account, our largest customer. I found out on a Thursday. I was supposed to meet Fulcrum in person for the very first time Tuesday. I call Tom Greer and Philip Lewis on Friday morning and say I have bad news and let them know that we just lost our number one account. They got acquired. We got line item'd out. That was a very, very big hit. And I called them because I really thought they would probably want to cancel the meeting, right? Because we would be less attractive. They said, no, let's have the meeting. We had the meeting. Circle back 2 years after we ended up signing with them, Tom and I were sitting down and I brought that story up and I said, I can't believe you all heard that, still had the meeting and then signed with us. Tom's response was, Jason, that story is one of the reasons we signed you. If you were willing to share that type of news, that bad of news, while we were in the process, giving us an out, we always knew that what you told us was going to be the truth. And that's the type of people we want to partner with. So that allowed me to really bring really, really hard things, say I don't know, and say I need help. So one of the ways that Fulcrum helped fuel our growth, we joined the Fulcrum kind of family, if you will, portfolio in 2019. We all know what happened in 2020. We all were thrown pretty massive curveballs. Stratasan wasn't, we suffered from it as well. We had to go through an exercise where we were looking at, cutting a big portion of our staff because of the results that were happening in 2020. We took that proposal to the board, to Fulcrum, and we had some escrow money from the transaction that was going to come from Fulcrum if we didn't hit certain metrics. So this is 9 months after our signing with them. And even though 2020 had happened, COVID had changed a lot of things in the healthcare space, their statement to us after giving the plan that we were willing to execute, not happy about it, but willing to execute, the response was, you're not cutting fat, you're cutting meat and even to the bone. So instead of us recouping that escrow money, we want to put it right back into the company. That was a cash bump to us with no equity exchange, no dilution for the founders or any of our other shareholders. That was just something they did because they continued to believe in our story. I think that illustrates how they very effectively fueled our growth from a specific point, and their skills beyond that also helped.
And who knows where we would be today if we had to move forward with those cuts and made those decisions.
Yeah.
I think another thing that Fulcrum brought to us was a clear-eyed understanding. I remember Philip saying after one board meeting or during a board meeting that we were thinking like a startup and we needed to elevate and mature our thinking to think like a scaling company, and like a platform was the language he used. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that as a senior leadership team. What does that mean? And where are we today? And what do we have to do to get from where we are today to that truly scaling company? And that we were making decisions as though we were, sub $4 million, and we weren't.
Yeah, and I think the key there is Philip and the rest of the board being willing to have that conversation with us, because that's not a hard, or that's a very hard thing to tell a founder and to tell a management team. That we believe in you, you're doing good things, but you're thinking like a startup, and you're not a startup anymore. And that can be taken very offensively, and actually it kind of was right out of the gates. But then when we really had time to reflect on that as a management team, that truly kind of changed our mindset, allowed us to continue or to think about things differently, and fueled the growth for the next 2.5 years.